Since time immemorial, the Anglo-Saxons and their continental forefathers had been practitioners of Germanic paganism, adhering to the worship of Woden and other deities. While Christianity had arrived in the British Isles during Roman rule, it had failed to spread to these new settlers thanks to the often frictious relationship between the Anglo-Saxons and the Britons. This entrenched heathenry, however, would begin to erode roughly a century and a half following the first arrival of Anglo-Saxons to England, during the reign of Aethelberht, King of Kent. Born around the year 560, Aethelberht was the son of King Ermenric. Very little is known about his early life beyond this, as is the case with most early Anglo-Saxon rulers. The most important detail of his life prior to becoming king was his marriage to Bertha, daughter of the Frankish king Sherley-Price, sometime in the late 570s. During this period, Kent was the preeminent Anglo-Saxon kingdom, reigning at times as overlord of the other kingdoms south of the Humber, with Bede marking it as the realm established by the mythical king Hengist. This can provide reasoning for how they managed to secure such a lucrative marriage, despite being a seemingly vastly inferior and heathenish polity. There are also indications of a deep relationship between the two kingdoms, with the name Ermenric being of Frankish origins. Nevertheless, the marriage was only permitted on the condition that Bertha would be allowed to continue to practice her Christian faith, and that a bishop named Luithard would be permitted to accompany her, serving as her chaplain. According to William of Malmesbury, Luithard was able to soften Aethelberht's heart to the Christian religion, though did not manage to convert him outright. He would provide Bertha with an ancient Roman church to pray at near the ruins of Durovernum, which would come to be known as Canterbury, meaning the stronghold of the Kentish people. Aethelberht likely succeeded to the throne around the year 590, yet quickly suffered military defeats at the hand of the dominant Anglo-Saxon ruler, known as the Bretwalda, King Ceawlin of Wessex, and struggled to maintain the defense of his frontiers. The situation would reverse, however, with the death of Ceawlin, with Aethelberht becoming the Bretwalda sometime before or around the turn of the century. He would maintain this dominant position over his neighbors for the rest of his reign, subjugating them up to the river Humber, allowing him to influence them and their rulers, though to varying degrees. Further proselytization efforts only finally came in the year 596 at the initiative of Pope Gregory the Great, who dispatched a 40-man mission to Kent, led by the monk Augustine, in the hopes of converting the populace. Upon setting out, the mission faltered, fearing venturing into a pagan land, especially without knowledge of the English language. Pope Gregory was able to encourage them to continue onwards though, and the group landed at the Isle of Thanet in the east of Kent in the spring of 597. Interpreters were sent to speak with Aethelberht, who directed the mission to remain on Thanet while he decided on what was to be done with them. Deciding to personally meet with them, Aethelberht set out for Thanet, where he held an outdoor audience with Augustine and his companions, for fear that they would be able to use magic and deceive him if they met indoors. Preaching to the king, they made a good impression on him, though failed to immediately convert him. Stating his apprehension on casting aside his pre-held beliefs despite the reasonableness of their message, he nevertheless allowed them to stay in Kent and preach to the people. For this, he allowed for the use of the church previously given to Bertha, which was to now be known as St. Martin's. The mission proved greatly successful, with Pope Gregory writing to Patriarch Eulogius of Alexandria in 598 that over 10,000 of Aethelberht's subjects had already been baptized. Within a short time, Aethelberht himself was able to be convinced and baptized into the faith sometime prior to 601, when Pope Gregory wrote a letter to the king, addressing him as a Christian, and asking him to do what he could to spread Christianity. Aethelberht would heed this call, gifting the mission with valuables, as well as greater lands within Canterbury. His efforts would remain in line with the teachings of his church instructors though, and he would not forcibly convert people. Beyond his own borders, however, the Christianization efforts proved to be a mixed bag. Pope Gregory, emboldened by the success of the Kent mission, planned to bring Christianity to the entire English people through the establishment of 2 archbishoprics at London and York. This plan had rather limited success, with 2 bishoprics being set up instead, at Rochester in West Kent and at London. The conversion of the kings nominally underneath him also proved mixed. The nephew of Aethelberht, King Sabert of Essex, was successfully converted, allowing for the aforementioned establishment of the bishopric at London. King Raedwald of East Anglia was converted as well, and Augustine was elevated to the office of Archbishop of Canterbury by Bishop Aetherius of Lyon, as directed by Pope Gregory, but failed to bring the Brittonic bishops under his jurisdiction. King Raedwald also never fully committed to the religion, keeping both a Christian and pagan altar in the church. Thanks to this influx of literate churchmen, Aethelberht was also able to create a written law code, which is believed to be the oldest Anglo-Saxon text in existence, though it only survives in the modern day from a 12th century manuscript, the Textus Rofensis. Upon Aethelberht's death in 616, his son Eadbald apostatized from the faith and married his stepmother, second wife of Aethelberht following the passing of Bertha. This led to a wave of apostasy of those who had converted in order to appease Aethelberht, causing a great setback in the Christian mission in England. The death of King Sabert of Essex made things even worse, as all three of his sons who split the inheritance apostatized, and encouraged their subjects to do the same. They also drove Bishop Mellitus of London into exile after he refused to let them eat the communion bread, and ordered his followers to leave as well. First going to Kent, he met with his fellow bishops, with him and Bishop Justus of Rochester deciding to leave for Francia, while Archbishop Lawrence decided to remain on the day before he was to leave, after having a vision of the Apostle Peter chastising and scourging him for abandoning his flock. He then went to meet King Eadbald the following morning and showed him the lash marks. Upon learning that the scourging had taken place for his own salvation, Eadbald gave up his apostasy and his unlawful marriage, and was rebaptized into the church. Bishops Justus and Mellitus were recalled, though the people of London refused to let Mellitus return to his episcopal see. Despite these constant struggles, the mission first sent by Pope Gregory proved unable to wholly unseat, with Christianity growing in power over time until the whole English people came into the faith. While the Kingdom of Kent would fade from importance, being subsumed in power by its former subject kingdoms, the archbishoprics set up by Augustine would remain incredibly influential over religion in the nation, despite a number of attempts at dividing and removing its power. The Christianization of the Anglo-Saxons was only possible due to the willingness of King Aethelberht to permit the proselytization efforts of Augustine and his companions, and his efforts to spread and reinforce the mission.